Asinivusele maswahla amahle sinivusele benkosi lenhle ke nanamuhla luhlelweni Embili kanye libito lami ngijoin ngakaphireza isibongo kwinto kodwa maswahla amahle ukuthi ke lo mtsala wethu insuku ke uphinze wasipha ke lithuba ukuthi singaphinze ke sidibane kulo ke lihlelo Embili kanye singadibani nje kuphela maswahla amahle nalokuthi nje siphilile sesitawenda ngomsebenzi walo ke live kuyinto lenkulu kithi siyakubonga lokho sathemba ukuthi nanani niphilile kuphina kuphi ke lapho ke lo msakado Eswatini TV ufinyelela khona ngiyakhumbula lokwasikhula katheni television kwakujikiswa lolugotho lengemuva kuthi hey gucula bhekisa lena sithombe singatholakali kahle ngakuthuthuka kwato ke tinvo akusafanani maswahla amahle sithombe ke cishe sesihle emakhaya ngenza bayabo digital migration ikhambe yafika leyo development leyo sikholwa ke futhi ukuthi kusetawuhamba kube nalenye lengcono kunaloko sethemba nje ukuthi sithombe nesithola kahle emakhaya umsindo isound nithola kahle akusithi nakubona umuntu avela kahle kodwa ungamtholi kahle sound is a critical component of what we do and I do hope ukuthi emaswati ayasithola ngalendlela lekufanele ukuthi asithole ngakhona ngethemba ukuthi nihambe kahle bekunene tinzaweni letahlukahlukene lokukhulu bekwendeka kulempela sondvo live bekade lihlangene ke emntini wobukhosi ke ebuhleni kusukela ngalesihlanu umgcibelo lisondvo emaswati ke solahlangene ke namakhosi alo ke live ngiyengithi ngicabanga lento ngithi ukude ke live lelinenhlanhla njenge noma ke bantu labanenhlanhla njengebantu banale live lesiphila kilo laseSwatini itolo lo kuyingonyama yamaswati beyiphefumulela kumhlaba lapha ke eParliament ikhuluma ngetinfo lesithi ke dineketa i-direction ukuthi ke live aliphuma libheke phi kusetshenzwa kanjani enza eminyakeni wanga 2024 lokho kule weekend esiqhamuka kiyo kusukela ngalesihlanu ukuze kube ngilomuhla emaswati ahleli ke nangwenyama kukhulunyiswa dona ke tindzaba deliver njengoba ke siyathi ukuthi ingwenyama inkosi emswati wesithathu iyawuphefumulela ke umhlaba mayihlangane namaswati ke wonke umkhosi webugano iwuphefumulele ke umhlaba ke ingwenyama yamaswati yabonga ke tinfo letinyenti kakhulu kati ke letentiwa ke bomake evenda kangwane yakhulumisa ke indzaba yokuthi bomake bayalekelela ukuthi ke live balibambe ngetingoma ikakhulu kati ke bathi cambako letikhulumisa ukuthi live libe nawo ke umgogodla nendlovu yemhlaba ke nanayo waphefumulele ke emaswati ikakhulu kati bona ke bomake yabacela ke tinfo nanabo ke lebacela dona kungako ngithi kuyinhlanhla ngoba akukavami ikakhulu kati ke baholi bemave ukhanze ukuthi kuleli viki leli nakuleli viki lelitako bakhulumisa ke tinfo letiwakhako ke emaswati nalokuhlangana emaswati abenza wonye kuyinfo ke lesiyibongako kulomtsala wethu insuku asikuboni kakhulu kulamanye amave kodwa kunengi kulakithi ke ekhaya ke Eswatini ehlelweni Embili kanye solo ke sichubeka nayo ke indzaba maswati lamahle kakhulu kati siyathi ukuthi evikini eliphelile ngwenyama mayivula ke iParliament yakhuluma tinfo letinengi noma ke mayiphefumulela umhlaba yethula ke tinfo letinengi lekufanele ke ukuthi silandzelele sitibambe sitikhulumise sitibuke si-challenge ke ama stakeholders nanathi nje as individuals sitilandzelele leto tinfo kuze ke ukuthi lokhu ingwenyama yemhlaba lebona ngazuthi kutawuphilisa live layo nebantu bayo kukwasebentele ke maswati sithi the Eswatini business environment Eswatini 2024 business environment opportunities and challenges sibhajwe kuphi akuphi emathuba kungilokumcoka ukuthi emaswati ke award emathuba ukuthi akuphi I do have an economist in the studio with me today whom I want to give ample time to dissect the issues I was with him last week or we were with him last week Dr. Chonga who is an economist a renowned economist from Safred who is going to be helping us to dissect and to see where these opportunities are where the bottlenecks are in terms of our business environment, our economy. Why are we importing so much? Why are we not reinforcing the agriculture space? Where are the SMEs losing it, or where are the SMEs not getting it right? You know, there's still a lot of unemployment in the country. Could the SME sector be an opportunity to curb unemployment in the country? Dr. Chonga, a very good evening and a warm welcome to Embili Kanye.
Thank you so much, Mr. John, for inviting me on this platform, very important platform. And a very good evening, viewers. I hope this will be a very, very informative dialogue that we shall have.
Of course, you defined the speech from the throne last week as a blueprint. Yes. You know, when I asked you what do you make of the speech from the throne, and you said, you know, such a speech becomes a blueprint for economic and social direction and for many other things in the country. Yes. When a document is a blueprint, it is a document that cannot be used once in a while. It is something that we need to refer to from time to time, which is why we are back here today, Dr. Chonga, just to see what we need to do in terms of where the opportunities are for Eswatini, where the challenges are. We need to speak to different sectors, the SME, agriculture, and many other sectors that we think or believe could help Eswatini to move forward. One of the key issues we need to discuss here, Dr. Chongwa, when you listen to the speech from the throne by His Majesty the King last week, what sort of outlook did it give you in terms of the business environment in the country?
Thank you so much, John. It's very true. Everything begins and ends with business, because business is a driving force for economic development, economic sustainability, everything. In fact, when we talk about the SDGs, they are as a result of human activity from a profit perspective, which is business. So His Majesty's speech, or the speech from the throne, took this as a factor or a hub which should be taken into consideration. Let's take, for example, when there was COVID-19, businesses were told to shut down. And the implications we saw, loss of employment, loss of social cohesion, and your government had to say, let us open up for essential businesses. So business is business. That is why we even advise government to operate like a business, not to operate like a charity organization. But if it operates like a business, degrees of accountability are going to increase. Degrees of transparency are going to increase. Levels of corruption will drop significantly because government now is operating like a business. So to me, I think being driven by business principles at a national level is very fundamental and very strategic at the same time.
Yeah. What would be your take on the state of the economy as it is? When His Majesty presented the speech, he gave us a positive outlook in terms of strides that the economy has made, thanking the previous parliament in terms of the effort that they put to make sure we get to where we are. But of course, there are still some bottlenecks here and there. What are some of those bottlenecks as we start the year 2024?
The biggest challenge that we have from the governance and economic perspective right now as we speak is the challenge of uncertainty because of climate change. A lot of things are now happening, and governments must now become more innovative. So in the midst of a high degree of uncertainty, it's very, very challenging to allocate economic resources in economic activities in order to have long-term impacts. So we are basically driven with the challenge of having to maintain between short-term impact as well as long-term impact, which is a challenge on its own. So the degree of uncertainty is really, really challenging macro and microeconomic policy development and management.
Yeah. What are some of these factors that you think demonstrate a level of uncertainty in our business environment?
It's the decline of the global market in general. The global economy has declined by 1 to 2%. That's on a global effect, which is huge. And our country, fortunately enough, is growing at 4%. This is the GDP rate. Growth rate is around 4 to 5%, though we have not yet reached the 5% mark, which His Majesty is, promoting for the government to achieve, which is a very nice threshold, especially at regional level at least, and subsequently global level. So the decline in global economies has strongly affected us because we are an import-based economy.
Yeah.
And not only that, we also export for us to get revenue like SACU revenues. So, but however, according to World Bank reports, the global economy is steadily recovering. But that steadily recovering is a cost on our side because it's not speedily recovering.
Yeah.
So those are some of the issues that we have to take into consideration.
We are already talking about the business environment, Dr. Chongwa, and I think one of the things you just recently mentioned is the fact that even our government ought to operate like a business. What do you feel we are missing it in terms of maybe strengthening certain policies and perhaps where government is losing resources that our government shouldn't be losing because it's not operating like a business? Yes. And I think this will be followed up by my next question, where the Prime Minister recently, our Prime Minister recently had an engagement with the principals of state-owned enterprises as far as making sure that, or challenging them that they need to generate income on their own instead of relying on our government, which could be one of those issues where if you responded, probably you need to be touching on as well, Dr. Chongwa.
That is the best way of embracing a common concept, which is risk-bound concept of like you are trying to decentralize the system. Decentralization of the system doesn't mean that each unit should be working alone, but for the sake of risk. So you are basically sharing the risk. In case anything happens in the hub, which is the central office of governance, other institutions were able to look after themselves. So if government encourages, for example, local governments to operate like business, and they take care of their own fiscal policies, their own even monetary policies, then we are going to discover that government is going to have a less burden in addressing issues which should be addressed by certain structures that are put in place to address those structures.
Yeah.
And not only that, it is going to help us to have what we call a sustainable fiscal space. Now, when we talk about sustainable fiscal space, we are talking about the degree at which government is able to handle the demands of money, if I may use in short terms, which is basically the issues of the revenue side and the issues of the expenditure side. Because each parastatal or each government institution is operating independently and profitably. So at the end of the day, there will be less dependence on government coffers.
Yeah.
As a result, we are going to progress very, very effectively.
Yeah. What is the likelihood or the feasibility of the state-owned enterprises making it on their own without government subvention? The call from His Excellency the Prime Minister was that state-owned enterprises, for instance, need to stop relying on government subvention so that at least they are able to generate revenue and profits on their own. How feasible is this in this economy, Dr. Chongwa?
It begins and ends with innovative policies.
Innovative policies, yeah.
So innovative governance is what we need for now. And innovation, it's simply the ability to become creative and sustainable enough to address our own immediate as well as future needs. So if we can promote innovative governance, innovative thinking at parastatal level or at institutional level, then definitely the country is going to stabilize. One of the biggest challenge we have is the challenge of institutional failure. This is a challenge in most governments in Africa, institutions. So once institutions begin to operate more efficiently, more effectively, then deliverables, service delivery, it comes back to the issues which were brought up at Sibaya.
Yeah.
People from all walks of the country were simply saying, we are not enjoying the services that are entitled to us that much.
Of course. Yeah.
That is basically service delivery. So if we promote innovative governance at institutional level, then service delivery is not going to be a problem at all.
Yeah. I don't know if by means of this question I am putting you on the spot, Dr. Chonga, but the organization which you chair in Eswatini, which is SAFRED,
Yes.
the Southern Africa Research Foundation for Economic Development, is a research-based organization.
Yes.
Do you possibly have certain models from within the SADC region, even if that were the case, where state-owned enterprises are self-sustainable and not dependent on government? Because this could possibly help us to benchmark with what other countries are doing as far as the Prime Minister's call is concerned.
Thank you so much for that. Our job is to make sure there is the right knowledge to the right people for the benefit of the African economies. And it's very true. There are countries right now, as we are speaking, like Rwanda. Rwanda is thriving in this agenda because the head of state in that country simply tasks each and every parastatal to say, you are not here to depend on us. Prove to us so that we don't shut you down. So everyone in that particular parastatal knows that it's bread at stake here. They work hard. Another country which, I think by the help of the World Bank, which really came massively in this agenda is Tanzania. Tanzania has been improving, especially on the private sector, a lot. Then under worst case scenario analysis, there is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe disintegrated, as we all know. The economies of Zimbabwe had literally collapsed. But guess what? Through innovative governance or through innovative economic policy, Zimbabwe managed to take care of itself affairs in its own realm. And this is why His Majesty now says, we wish to see Eswatini having resilient policies. Remember? Especially in urban economies, in urban sectors. Because once we become resilient, then we are promoting innovation. And once we promote innovation, we are promoting adaptation. So, to me, number one, we must not look for others. Why can't we be the lead? They must come and knock on the doors of Eswatini to say, you know what, you seemingly to be making it good. And we can do it through research and development activities. Because development in our profession, Mr. John, it is a contextual concept. That is why I am proudly telling you that if you look at the 17 SDGs, Eswatini has already scored close to 70% in the context of Eswatini. We have scored above the benchmark of SDGs, except that we need to package it to show that we have achieved this by this, this by that. Then other countries will come and learn from us, and it is very, very possible.
Of course. I think one of the issues as we round up on the issue of state-owned enterprises, which of course was a follow-up in terms of the thought you brought up when you said our government needs to operate like a business,
Yes.
The state-owned enterprises, Dr. Chonga, employ quite a number of people in a country that is also struggling with unemployment.
Exactly.
Will it work to our advantage if we streamlined the state-owned enterprises? And I know there's a study from SEPAC which has made recommendations to our government,
Yes.
which has approved by both houses of parliament in terms of saying we need to cut down the number of state-owned enterprises for purposes of course, of the amount of resources government remits to these state-owned enterprises. But will that not be counterproductive in terms of employment and unemployment issues?
If anything is not effective, you cut it down. It's even a biblical principle. Jesus talked about it. But on my side, I feel the parastatals are already strategically positioned. All what we need to do is to make them more profitable. I'll tell you.
Self-sustainable.
Self-sustainable. Because there's a concept we call the forward, backward, and horizontal integration. The parastatals, once they are made sustainable and profitable enough, there will be the channels of employment, stimulating business to the informal sector, stimulating business to the SMEs, because they will be buying from the SMEs, and they'll be creating market for the SMEs. That is basically the backward integration. And not only will they be buying and creating business for the SMEs, let's take, for example, parastatal A. needs detergents just to clean itself, to clean its floors, do we have to buy detergents from South Africa? But we can have a special policy within the tendering framework to say, to accommodate SMEs who may want to start supplying to government. They must have must be a Swazi, have a Eswatini ID, must be a trading license, so that we can start tapping up business at grassroots level. And this can only be done instead of this John Peritz who wants to supply detergent. You can't bring that to government. Government is too big and busy for that. But through a parastatal, which is now self-sustained, then of course is creating employment, direct and indirect, to an SME who is actually trying to get a niche in the entire government machinery. And His Majesty, in his speech, he emphasized that government must come up with strategies, meaning innovative strategies, that are going to accommodate SMEs to be part of the entire development machinery.
Yeah, I know you to be one of the key players who has a loud voice when it comes to issues of SMEs, to the point where you have mentored, you speak openly about your work with SMEs. We need to find out, where are we lacking? What do we need to do? We have an SME policy in the country. It was believed or hoped that with this policy, the environment will improve. But His Majesty is still making a call today to say we need to create strategies that will not only stimulate but to help expand the SME sector in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Maswatla mahle sithatha ke likhefu elifishane sibuye siqhubeke nehlelo.
Residents of Simunye and surrounding areas are notified that intense TV license door-to-door inspections are being conducted in the region. The exercise starts on the 19th to the 28th of February 2024. Stay alert. Our TV license inspectors will be wearing Eswatini TV gear and will have tags that confirm their identity. Don't be scammed. Our inspectors do not ask for cash payments. Pay your TV license only at specified pay points, or call us on 34050163 or 78024545 for more information. Alternatively, you can send a WhatsApp message to 76222000 and we'll chat with you. Pay your TV license today, enhance the industry.
Maswatla mahle sithemba ukuthi niphilile niyalithokotela ke lihlelo. Sikhulumisa ke indzaba yokuthi ingabe ke esimo setemabhizinisi, isimo ke semnotho eveni la kaNgwane simeke kanjani masibuka ke umnyaka wanga 2024, ikakhulu kade sifuna kubuka ukuthi akuphi amathuba, akuphi ama challenges. Dr. Chonga, we were talking about the involvement of SME as a tool to help our economy grow, and His Majesty has made a call that we need to come up with strategies that will not only stimulate but also to expand the SME sector in the country. And I did mention that we do have an SME policy that's already existing in the country. It was hoped or believed that with the availability of this policy, the environment, the SME policy, the SME environment in the country was going to improve. Where are the challenges? Where are the bottlenecks? What do we need to do? If you were to create, or if you were to submit one or two points towards the creation of a strategy that will help improve the SME environment in the country, what would be your take?
Number one, let us make our SME framework organic. It must be Eswatini based. That is why some countries, they say proudly Eswatini, proudly etc. For ethical reasons. We have to make our SME organic, number one. Number two,
can you define what you mean by making our SME sector organic, Dr. Chonga?
Is value addition.
Value addition.
Value addition. let us create small-scale industries. Small-scale industries, these are the cheapest and the most effective mechanisms that empowers the locals to come up with products of which they are going to supply in the mainstream of the economy.
Yeah, and your second point?
The second point is fragmentation. SMEs in Eswatini, they are fragmented, meaning they are not mainstreamed in the procurement policies. So as a result, they don't have substantial market. Number three, SMEs have got a challenge of payments. John Perez is selling tomatoes. Chongwa is selling vehicles. We are already different. So there must be a different payment system for SMEs according to their own bracket. Let's take, for example, government now we have moved into digitalization of economy. Government can pay SMEs through mobile money. So that because the SME operates on a higher cash flow returns, not high margins, high returns. So if you hold an SME, you're not paying him or her for a mere 2 weeks, it's a disaster. So he starts borrowing somewhere else. By the time the money comes to pay the SME, he already has debts. So at the end of the day, they don't grow, they don't see value. So these are the fundamental elements that should be taken into consideration. Value addition, and integration, as well as revision of the monetary system in favor of SMEs.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago on this very same show, I think we had a young person who is also a beneficiary of many of the business platforms that award young people who are in business, and she is also serving as a mentor. And I think she made an interesting remark to me. She said, one of the things I've learned in business is do not start your small-scale business with money that you've borrowed either from the bank or from an institution.
Yes.
Whereas there is a big talk around the need for small businesses to be capitalized, which is why our government set up, for instance, organizations like FinCorp, and also the Youth Revolving Fund as well is one of those, you know, where young people have to go there and they have to make use of the money and also return it to the coffers of the fund as well. But what is your take as far as capitalizing businesses that belong to young people, people who are starting out, you know? How do they need to raise this capital so that it doesn't become a thorn in the flesh when they start running the businesses?
That's an interesting question. The key is not the business. The key is the human capital development.
Develop the people running the business.
Human capital.
Yeah.
We always forget, we always think that is business. There is no business without human capital when we talk about SMEs, because you are the business. So we have to start with you. What we see, you selling tomatoes and other things, those are just the outcome or the output. But we have to start with human capital development. Now, let me give you an example. If you take a walk in the streets of Mbabane, Manzini, or Pixpeak, or any town, you will realize that there are certain people there in the streets, youth in particular, who are trying to make ends meet. They are selling tomatoes or sweets or whatever. Now, those are the right candidates to finance or to give grants, because they have already proved by partnership that I am more than willing. Than getting a youth who is in his or her mother's house with a remote control watching TV and say, okay, do you want to start business? Usually they default higher than those who are already trying to make ends meet. So what I'm trying to say is this: let there be a fund, more or less like a grant capital, to start or to boost those who are already running. Then the loans become effective once you are already running, you have already accumulated assets and liabilities, so that in the event that you don't meet the loans, the business at least will be able to take care of itself. By principle, Mr. John, you can only borrow at least 20% of your liquidity value of your business. Why 20%? Because of the Pareto efficiency principle. But most business people, especially the SMEs, they don't understand these principles. Hence human capital development. They go and borrow 100%. Then when the banks decide to liquidate them, they go back to sub-zero, which is a disaster on its own. So to me, let us start by building human capital first. Once human capital is developed, then the rest becomes not a problem.
Where do we start, Dr. Chongwa? Who has the responsibility to develop human capital that will make sure that these young people, these unemployed people, run thriving businesses when they start running these businesses?
Government has more than enough institutions in place. And Eswatini has, though, both in the private sector as well as in the public sector. We also have institutions running, I can't mention names right now for ethical reasons, that are actually NGOs designed to support SMEs. But the problem, they don't have a tag which coordinates all of them to say this is an organic Eswatini model. So other NGOs, they will come with a Tanzanian model. And yet, SME development, it is contextual. If you go to a country called Congo DRC, which is a country where I visited, you will find that people there, the way they survive in Kinshasa is different with the way they survive in Lubumbashi and other towns.
In the same country?
Yes. And they are very innovative according to their available resources in their own context.
Yeah.
Let's take, for example, SMEs in Maloma area where there's a mine. Those SMEs must be capacitated strategically to support the capital economic project, which is the mining there.
Yeah, to exploit that environment.
Exactly, that is how it should be. So in this way, we are going to create SMEs that add value in their own context.
So we cannot copycat these SME models and bring them into the country.
I strongly discourage that.
Yeah.
We can borrow principles, but let's say, for example, right now is Malula Festival.
Yeah.
And the festival is taking place in Mbuhleni.
Mbuhleni, yes.
The young people there, the business people there, they must take advantage of the natural gift of Mbuhleni. The problem we think that SMEs is coming to Mbabane and Manzini, flying around with plastics and in the corridor. No. This time around, with the agenda of SDGs, we are talking about localizing.
Yeah.
Localization.
Thank you so much on that particular subject, Dr. Chongwa. But I think it is also very incumbent on the people starting out on business to look out for knowledge from this knowledge-based institution that are meant to capacitate or to develop human capital. As far as agriculture is concerned, Dr. Chongwa, I think in the previous cabinet, agriculture was actually defined as one of the economic pillars. His Majesty says that there is a significant concern regarding the inability to meet our food security requirements domestically, resulting in a heavy reliance on imports. And in one of the stanzas, the King says, to improve access to funding, an agriculture development fund has been established, which is expected to boost investment and enhance performance of value chains. Let us nurture our land to give us more value addition. I think I am on the issue of how underutilized the agriculture space. I think this statement says we are not fully exploiting or fully harvesting the gains of our agriculture sector in the country. What are the challenges as far as the agriculture sector is concerned? And the King says, let us nurture our land to give us value addition.
It's true. Like we said, Mr. John, conventional policies are very, very challenging in African development studies, in our scope. Conventional, traditional. We need to adopt innovational agricultural practices. With the heat of climate change, El Nino destroyed a lot of crops, destroyed a lot of livestock. And that should be a learning curve for us to become more innovative. This time around, Eswatini, the goodness of Eswatini is it's a miniature economy, meaning it's small in size, strategically positioned. So in terms of transformation or adapting new policies or new mechanisms, that will promote sustainable agricultural practices is not a challenge compared to other countries with maybe 20,000 population. So to me, I feel that statement is actually very, very critical because of climate change. And once agriculture drops, food security becomes a problem. And once food security becomes a problem, issues of food prices, disposable income becomes a problem, issues of unemployment. So at the end of the day, the whole value, the quality of life, it deteriorates. Let's take, for example, buying bread must not be an issue. But once we reach levels whereby buying bread you have to think and how many slices your children should eat in the morning, then we know that we're in the danger zone. That is food security. So if agriculture sector becomes more innovative and more sustainable, then we are going to have a surplus. And we can create more than jobs. 70%, this is very important, 70% of Eswatini, they live in the rural community. And that is very true. So already, the rural community, it is in the danger zone. And the youths who are most unemployed, they're in the rural community. But we thank God because now we hope the new government will take an approach of supporting the youths in the rural, then coming to the urban youths, because the swing has been much on the urban side than in the rural community.
And yet we have the numbers that side.
70%.
70%.
70% plus in the rural community. Even the high levels of poverty rates, they are now inclined to the rural communities.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to be rushing you with this one, Dr. Chongwa. What is your view of the involvement or the contribution of the foreign direct investment space in the country as far as GDP is concerned, as far as its contribution to the general growth and sustainability of the economy? Is our foreign direct investment functioning at the way or the level it's supposed to be, or contributing to our GDP?
Eswatini has got a strategic position on the world map due to various reasons. Economic diplomacy is one of those reasons. Eswatini has got the excellent economic diplomacy of foreign policy. Unfortunately, Eswatini seems not to be faring well on the FDI level scale. So it must be taken into as a serious issue because Eswatini as a nation, it subscribes to international fora. Eswatini subscribes to ILO, Eswatini subscribes to COMESA, Eswatini subscribes to SADC, Eswatini subscribes to SACO and other international organizations. But it seems we still have to fold our sleeves, if I may use that word, and make sure we capitalize and maximize the privilege of foreign direct investment.
Yeah, there was a time when I think with every remark the king made when he opened or officially opened parliament in the yesteryears, he would make sure that he reinforces the need for us to build more factory shells in the country. Yes. What was the strategic positioning or the strategic importance of factory shells, and how are they doing in the country from a research point of view? Are they contributing towards the attraction of foreign direct investment in the country?
The factory shells was a strategy on its own, economic development strategy. And under economic development, the zoning, economic zones. So far, they usually say so far so good, but I can say so far not so good, because the factory shells were established or have been established. But the output in a short and medium term seems not to correlate the expectations why they were actually funded by government, of which
they should be incentivizing those wishing to conduct business in the country. Where are the impediments, Dr. Chongwa?
I see the challenges coming on the part of marketing. Strategically marketing the country itself. It's like you have done the good background work, but you have not taken your work to the global market and showcase that this is what we have. And once you come to be with us, the incentives are A, B, C, D. Very little has been done. And if we can strengthen that agenda of putting Eswatini on a global market on a global sport, then definitely the value for money will be realized.
Yeah. In 2 minutes, Dr. Chongwa, if the country decided in the next month or two to host what it would call the Eswatini Foreign Direct Investment Indaba, and you were asked to make a submission to say if we were to review our foreign direct investment policy, these are some of the things we would need to review, what would be your submission?
Number one, let us create what we call a niche, an economic niche, so that investors, they know exactly what they are going for. Number two, let us create incentives. Incentives that are going to stimulate more capital generation and more infrastructural development. Then number three, let us emphasize that our investment model is not only a model, but a different model from the rest, so that we can create what we call the comparative and competitive advantage. Otherwise, the struggle is real, and we have to be so robust and aggressive for us to win what we call the global advantage in terms of market.
And I am hoping that your submissions are falling into the right ears. There's a lot of talk about the strategic oil reserve, and the King made reference to the project starting in the next 6 months in the country. What is your take? Why is it important that the country has what you call the strategic oil reserve, Dr. Chongwa?
Mr. John, the time where we are living in right now is a ticking time bomb because of climate change. And energy sector is a very fundamental sector which should be taken as a priority. And not only energy, green energy. So in as much as we are creating oil reserves, we need at the same time transit towards green energy. And His Majesty has been talking about the hydropower, for example. Because you see what is happening with Eswatini, the economy is growing. And we have been depending much on the South African side. So we need to ensure that our energy sector is independent and sustainable. Otherwise, we are likely to fall in a trap of load shedding. And load shedding is detrimental to development or to develop economic growth. So the oil reserve is a strategy which will give path to green energy transition. So it's good that we have those structures in place, and they must be taken as a priority and also as a launch pad to green energy, transmission, which is green economics.
Dr. Chongwa, thank you so much once again for coming through and for sharing your knowledge, your insight, and your views as far as the Eswatini 2024 economy is concerned. We've discussed issues where the challenges are, where opportunities are, and we do hope that Eswatini as individuals will also rise to the occasion in terms of saying, I need to be doing this personally. If I am starting out a business, I need to look out for knowledge, and those who are tasked with giving out the same knowledge need to be aggressive, go out more in terms of making sure that Eswatini are given this particular knowledge. And in many of the other sectors, if I've got land, let me use my land to help Eswatini be food secure. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Chongwa, for coming through.
A pleasure indeed, Mr. John.
Maswatla mahle besikhathi sixoxisana ke la na dokotela bodokotela kubangilaba labagcoka letimhlophe etibhedlela kodwa lo lesihleli naye ngilomuhla ngilocata indzaba temnotho athi khulumise ke kabani njengoba besikhathi sikhulumisa namuhla bekafaka ke imibono yakhe nemicondvo yakhe ukuthi kumbe ke uhulumende wakithi nelive lakithi emaswati abambisene emangabe angabuka naku abuke naku live lakithi ke litawuya ke Embili. Sathemba ukuthi ni ludokotela uhlelo maswatla mahle siyawuphinze ke sibonane ngalokutako. Jehova makasigcinile nisale kahle.
uyaphila